Super Mario Odyssey was originally presented as a return to the sandbox style of 64 and Sunshine, as opposed to the mission-based structure of the later games. That's mostly true, but leaving it at that would be a grave disservice. Odyssey isn't just a return to form, it goes so far back to the other extreme that it barely resembles the original games in the first place. This isn't necessarily good or bad, but it does make for a very different experience than what most players might expect. The story is your typical Mario fare, and I'm glad it doesn't waste a whole lot of time getting to it. Princess Peach is captured, again, and Mario joins up with a new buddy to save her. Not a water jetpack or a baby star, but a ghost that can take the form of hats and is capable of possessing others. Simply throw the hat at an enemy to take control of their body and unlock new abilities. The typical roll call of locales are available. You've got the desert level, water level, forest level, ice level, and so on. It's all pretty standard fare, but everything has an extra level of detail and polish than one would be used to seeing in a Mario game. Aside from Mario's close-up details, nothing is really graphically impressive. However, Odyssey shines through in its art design. Every level has so much heart and soul poured into it, both from the characters that inhabit it and from the environment itself. The Sand Kingdom is lively, while the Lake Kingdom is mellow, and the Wooded Kingdom is quiet and mysterious. It's good that each area does so well at carrying its own identity, because the player is likely to spend a good chunk of time doing nothing but exploring the same maps. The goal in Super Mario Odyssey is to collect power moons, similar to stars in the previous games. But unlike the previous games, there's a veritable truckload of moons to collect. Each new kingdom begins with a few linear missions that act as an introduction and help push the story along. Afterwards, the player is left to their own devices to either move on to the next part of the game or collect the upwards of 30 or more moons that remain in the area, depending on the kingdom. The Sand Kingdom, for example, has a total of 89 moons. It would be pretty obnoxious to constantly get kicked back to the mission select screen, as in the older titles, so instead of a collection of individual levels, the moons are simply scattered throughout the areas and it's up to the player to track them down and find them all. Thus, Odyssey is far less like Mario 64 and far more so like Banjo-Kazooie. The maps are large and open, but never so much so that it becomes overwhelming, like most open world games are, and there's often a high point that the player can use to take in the layout of the land. Here is where I take an issue with the game. There is a major lack of challenge for nearly the entire adventure, and I feel as though this is due strictly to its non-linear approach. While 64 and Sunshine could be classified as sandbox games, they were still designed around the player approaching the objective from a specific angle. With Odyssey, moons are scattered all over the place, and the landscape is littered with half-baked attempts at obstacle courses placed around seemingly at random. Even the self-contained challenge rooms fail to impress, which is confusing since Nintendo was already great at it with Sunshine, and then they perfected it with the Galaxy games. But even then, those are still the best parts of the game, which is a shame because the majority of it is spent exploring wide open areas with hardly any dangers. I know I sound really harsh, but this isn't what I expected out of Odyssey, and I don't feel like it's exactly what Nintendo was advertising either. I wanted tight, well-designed levels, which in turn would help encourage exploration and experimentation. That's what made Super Mario 64 such a masterpiece. With Odyssey, the levels aren't necessarily well designed. They're either mostly flat or just a couple of moving staircases, and that's about it. They're really just a collection of miniature open world maps, and exploration becomes the objective rather than the driving force. It's a real shame because the controls and Mario's fluid movements are absolutely phenomenal. Simply figuring out the different ways to bypass obstacles entirely is a big part of the fun. That's why it's so unfortunate that the levels aren't designed to test the player. They're meant to simply give the player a playground to mess around in. The challenge here is in puzzle solving more than anything else, like figuring out how to get a seed up to a pot on the roof. The whole game is just working through little open world puzzles like that, and it doesn't get tough until the last couple of kingdoms. One of which plays just like a level from Super Mario Galaxy, which I find hilarious since that's the game that Odyssey was trying to shy away from. To be perfectly clear, I did enjoy Odyssey, certainly enough to unlock the final battle after collecting every moon in the game. The stellar presentation between the art design and the musical score is one of the main aspects that kept me coming back. And Mario's excellent controls make the game a joy just to jump around in. I wish there was more to the possession feature, but controlling enemies is really just a gimmick and not much more. Most enemies have very limited movement options, which is annoying in a game all about traversal, and I found myself using them strictly to accomplish a specific objective and then getting rid of them quickly. There are plenty of segments where the feature is used creatively, but it's mostly a glorified power-up system and not much more. Recommending Super Mario Odyssey is a tough call to make because I don't think that most people will understand what they're getting into. If anything, Super Mario 64 is actually closer to the Galaxy series than it is to Odyssey. If you're looking for a more focused, mission-based structure, then I would be hesitant before picking this up. On the other hand, if you want something that's more similar to Banjo-Kazooie, a game that's all about exploring wide open worlds and letting the beauty of one's surroundings immerse you, then Odyssey just might be right up your alley. Just keep in mind that it's also very easy. But easy doesn't necessarily mean bad, as it's still quite an enjoyable game. It's more of a relaxing, chilled out experience. I just wish the difficulty would have ramped up sooner rather than being saved for the very end, because at that point, it's too little too late. Thank you for watching my review on Super Mario Odyssey. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe.